It's not that I want to do it. I don't want to do it, but we have no choice. In recent weeks, law enforcement has become the target of a dangerous assault by the radical left. The left-wing extremists have spread mayhem throughout the streets of different cities, in particular Portland. If you look, Portland is one. Seattle certainly would be another. And we were getting ready to go into Seattle. We would have solved that problem very quickly. When they heard that we were going in, they went in. And by that time, the anarchists were exhausted, and they just raised their hand. They were exhausted and tired, and they had a lot of drugs and a lot of alcohol, and they just gave up. They just raised their hands. They were sleeping there long enough. They took over actually a piece of Seattle, if you can believe that, Seattle being a major city, and they took over a piece. So we were ready to go into Seattle. Everyone knows that. We were going to go in with force, and we didn't have to because the day before we were going in, and we let them know we were going in. This is what happens. They went in, and the anarchists and agitators gave up, and they gave it back. Joe Biden's pledge to cut police funding. You do know about that, Mick, I assume, right? You've heard that little rumor? This guy has been dragged so far left. Biden has been taken further left than Bernie ever was. Bernie was never this. I mean, totally open borders and the sanctuary city stuff that he's approving things that Bernie never thought of. It was supposed to be they were going to take him right. They took Biden way left of where Bernie was because they have the manifesto. I don't know. Have you seen the manifesto they've got? Now I understand they can't get any police in Milwaukee because you're not allowed to use pepper spray or tear gas because if you have crowds. But I don't think there's any other way other than the obvious way, which would be horrible. And that shooting itself, which would be horrible. But I don't know how you can control a crowd if that crowd's anything like what you have at Portland. There's no way you could possibly do it without tear gas and pepper spray. Pat, would you say that's a correct statement?
I agree. You have to control the streets. You have to do it fairly, but you have to do it.
It's pretty amazing, right? So you have no police that want to go to Portland because they know they can't do their job. You have to give them the equipment to do the job. It's incredible. They're not going to go till Milwaukee. So what's going to happen in Milwaukee, Mick? What do you think?
Well, I think that they're going to have the mad exodus that we're seeing in other parts of the country. And it, again, sir, it's the exposure of these men and women who continue to suit up and provide the safety that they took an oath to. And we want to, as an association, but we speak for all law enforcement, and thanking you personally for your executive order which allowed us to surplus equipment. That equipment is saving our lives, literally, sir, and we thank you. We thank you for all of us.
Thank you. Yeah. No, that was very controversial. The previous administration didn't want to do that. We had hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment, really good military equipment, good stuff, and a lot of it was protective. It was defensive equipment, where like vehicles that are very strong in terms of defense capability, where you wouldn't get hurt with the windows are, shatterproof, etc., and bulletproof. And we gave that out to our police departments. It was sitting there gaining dust. That was the only thing it was gaining, was dust. And we gave that out to all of our police departments all over the country. And you have no idea, every time I go someplace, the police thank me for that. This is stuff that was just getting less and less valuable. Much of it was brand new, but getting less and less valuable, sitting in warehouses. Probably the government was paying a lot of rent to the warehouses. And it's been a great thing. So as a result of the outrageous attacks on law enforcement, violent crime has surged in certain Democrat-run cities, many of them. I mean, you look at New York, it's up 348%. Who ever heard of a number like that? Because you have a radical left mayor who doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. I don't understand even how the police can allow it to happen. That's the only thing. We talk about that. But you look at Chicago. In Chicago, more than 2,200 people have been shot. Okay, think of that, shot. Now, that's far worse than Afghanistan. We're leaving Afghanistan fairly shortly, but we see things that in Chicago and other places that you don't see in Afghanistan. It's unbelievable. 40% increase from 2019. And the hard thing is that crime is down nationwide. So I'm taking all of these Democrat-run cities, and we're putting them in with the well-run cities and largely Republican well-run cities and states. And with all of this shooting that you see in Chicago and New York and, well, Minneapolis had a bad period, but we sent in the National Guard. The National Guard did a fantastic job, and they stopped it. That place would have burned down. Minneapolis would have burned down if I didn't force the National Guard into that. And you saw them form, right? It's a beautiful thing. All of a sudden, you see a line of people. They walk through it like a knife through butter. And that was the end of the problem in Minneapolis. So, you know, we have to do that. But in New York City, nearly 300 people have been shot in the last month alone. Murders are up 32% in Philadelphia and 80% in Minneapolis compared to last year. Minneapolis, great place too. And Philadelphia, you think of it. I went to school in Philadelphia. You look at these numbers. In cities across the nation, we've also seen police officers assaulted with bricks, rocks, bats, Molotov cocktails, frozen bottles of water. Somebody said last night, one of these protesters, I saw it, he said, "It's only water. How could water hurt you?" Yeah, they don't say it's frozen in a bottle the size of a football, and they throw it at the police. It's unbelievable. It's water. And then they have cans of soup, and they throw the cans of soup. That's better than a brick because you can't throw a brick, it's too heavy. But a can of soup, you can really put some power into that, right?
Yes, sir.
And then when they get caught, they say, "No, this is soup for my family." They're so innocent. "This is soup for my family." It's incredible. And you have people coming over with bags of soup, big bags of soup, and they lay it on the ground, and the anarchists take it, and they start throwing it at our cops, at our police. And if it hits you, that's worse than a brick because it's got force. It's the perfect size. It's like made perfect. And when they get caught, they say, "No, this is just soup for my family." And then the media says, "This is just soup. These people are very, very innocent. They're innocent people. These are just protesters. Isn't it wonderful to allow protesting?" No. And by the way, the media knows it better than we do. They know what's going on. I don't know what's wrong with them. They're doing our country a tremendous disservice, I'll say that. But in cities all across our nation, we've seen our police officers so badly assaulted. In Portland and the other cities, my administration is vigorously defending federal property from anarchists and criminals. We've also launched Operation Legend, surging federal law enforcement to communities plagued by violent crime. And we're willing to help Chicago. We're willing to help New York. We're willing to help Philadelphia, any city you want. But by law, unless we go a special route, which we have the right to do, but it's very rarely done, we have to be asked by the local government, by the mayors and by the governors. And they don't want to do it, I think for two reasons. Number one, they're embarrassed to do it. And number two, I actually think they're afraid of these people, if you want to know the truth. I actually think these are radical left maniacs. And I actually think, Pat, I think they're afraid of these people. I think they're afraid of those people that I see in Portland, and to a lesser extent that I've seen in Seattle. I mean, the Portland is a tougher group. You know, they've been doing that for years to Portland. They've been doing it for years and years to Portland, and the police stepped down, and I don't believe it's the police's fault. They're not allowed to do it. They're good police, but they can do it. Let's see how they do tonight over the last night. It was a big step, but let's see how they do. So it's an honor to have the associations here. We have been with them. I've had endorsements from so many police, and I don't even say thank you anymore. I say, what's your choice? Your choice is me or somebody that has no clue what they're doing. And I say that kiddingly, but I sort of mean it, right? I sort of mean it. So our relationship with law enforcement has been outstanding, and with firefighters. I mean, you have firefighters that go to put out a fire, and people are shooting at them. They're literally shooting at them as they're putting out the fire. Guys are going up on ladders, and people shoot at them. But we have great support from firefighters. Usually just the top one or two people don't support us, you know, because they're used to something else. But everybody in there, we have tremendous support from the police, the firefighters, and almost every group of people that are associated with the things that we're doing and doing really well. But I want to thank you all very much from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate those endorsements. We really do. It's really great, and you will never be let down with me. I have tremendous respect for what you do. It's dangerous. It pays not as well as they could do elsewhere. Many of the people, but they're discouraged. Many of the people, they do it. They love it, right? They love it. They would nothing they'd rather do. This is what they want to do. But it's a very dangerous profession, and we are going to toughen it up a lot because the mayors and the governors aren't allowing you to do your job. And you got to be allowed to do your job. When you see the things that we've seen in St. Louis, and by the way, you look at the last administration with Ferguson and all of the problems they've had. I mean, they had some problems that are doozies. You know, people said, oh, the last administration, they had this, that's what started a lot of this. If you look at some of the things that they had, I could name 10 of them right now. But we have to strengthen up because you're being told to do things that you know can't happen. In Seattle, they're reducing the force by massive numbers. In Portland, they're reducing their force. Can you imagine that? In Portland, they're reducing their force by massive numbers. But then the governor, like in Oregon, the governor said things that are just unbelievable. She doesn't want it to get better. The mayor of Seattle, the things that she said, we're going to have a summer of love. There's something going on that is crazy. Remember this, though, most of our cities are doing really, really well. And despite the pandemic, and we're doing a good job on that, we have vaccines that are really getting close. We have therapeutics that are really getting close. But despite all of that, these cities are doing very well, and law enforcement's at an all-time good. So most of it's good. We only talk about the bad, but most of it's good. Pat, would you like to say something and representing our New York's finest? And we'll go around the room a little bit.
We sure do. You know, in our city, we're going through a difficult time. We have a progressive mayor that's anti-police, a city council that's anti-police, and the state house is anti-police. So they're changing the law where it's becoming impossible to do our job. And remember what our job is, to keep folks safe. You do that by helping the good people, going after the bad people. They're stopping us from doing that. So we come down
So
here.
the mayor tells you, you can't do that. You cannot, your job is to keep people safe, right?
That's it.
So is that a higher calling